Five Nights at Freddy's has arguably the best fan base of any franchise out there, which is still on and going even to this day with the game coming out way back in 2014. The game is over a decade old and it's still going strong. With movies, novels, games coming out left and right, it's safe to say that Scott Cawthon has definitely put in a really good investment in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. But one of the biggest things that drives the FNAF franchise so crazy is the fan base. There are thousands and thousands of fans of this franchise out there. That's underestimating it, honestly. And one of the biggest parts of the fan base has got to be the fan-made games that are all released on Game Jolt. You see, Scott Cawthon is one of the coolest content creators out there, and he ended up coming out with the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, which basically gives people permission to make their own fan-made games out there. And while there are thousands of game developers out there, just a couple of them stand out in terms of controversy. Now, I've listed them before in videos in the past of how there are many different controversial creators out there, but there's one of them that comes to mind that came out with some of the craziest franchise out there. While this one doesn't quite top Dormit Abyss in terms of, just bizarre off-the-wall stuff, it's a pretty close second, and I want to dive right into there. But before we even do that, I want to take you back, way back to 2014, the year the original Five Nights at Freddy's came out. That one came out in August of 2014 and was released to obviously much critical acclaim. Just 3 months later, the second installment came out, which obviously came out to just as big critical acclaim as the original one did. And after that, there was obviously a lot of speculation of the third game coming out. See, what Scott Cawthon would do is make his teasers and he'd post it on his own website, scottcawthon.com. Basically, these teasers, without revealing anything too major, would give us a pretty good insight of what's upcoming for the next installment of the game, which is going to be the third Five Nights at Freddy's game. Well, we wouldn't end up getting that game until March of 2015. But prior to that, there was a lot of fake teasers and trailers that released for the game. A lot of people speculated that the third installment of Five Nights at Freddy's was going to take place in a carnival. Right here, we see Five Nights at Freddy's 3, Welcome to Freddyland. And this is a very well done image, but it's definitely not the game. This other one image right here says, "We're back," and it looks like Toy Bonnie was absolutely destroyed. Obviously, this is not the actual game. Even going as far as to making an entire trailer listed Five Nights at Freddy's 3 trailer that was uploaded in late November of 2014. And this trailer was freaking epic, but it was not even remotely close to real. However, before that, we found in December of 2014, if you happen to hop on Game Jolt, you'd find out that you actually found the third Five Nights at Freddy's 3. It's right here. Okay, that's not actually the third Five Nights at Freddy's 3, but what is this game? Well, it turns out it was one of the very few first FNAF fan games out there. That's right, this fake entity of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was one of the first ones to ever be made. But who made it? Well, I'm sure you've heard of him. None other than Tyler Ashstrom. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and I'm sorry for butchering it. But this is where Tyler got his first claim to fame, was right here. So people were pretty pissed off about this game because it clearly was not the third Five Nights at Freddy's game. So Tyler ended up creating the name Five Nights at Freddy's 3 Fan Made and thought he was slick with that name and he was going to get away with it. Well, eventually Scott Cawthon ended up chiming himself into this and saying, "Hey, you really need to change that name because people are genuinely, the game isn't even out yet." So Tyler decided to come up with a name that would absolutely change the perspective of every single one of his games and be engraved in everybody's mind for the most controversial franchise out there in the Return to Freddy's. Just this one video game right here would just start so much that Tyler wouldn't even realize, and it would blow up in popularity, but not really for the reason that you would think. But before we even chime into what exactly the Return to Freddy's franchise was, I want to look at some of the video games in particular, and then we can look at what Tyler was doing behind the scenes. So kicking off right here, we have the Return to Freddy's original, And this game is absolutely a clusterfuck of trash. This is literally just a copy and paste of the original two Five Nights at Freddy's game, all jumbled up into a clusterfuck of a video game. The main menu on its own is literally ripped off from the second game, but with only the withered animatronics being showed in the front. Once you get past that, you go to the main office, which is quite literally just the office from the original game, and even thrown in some FNAF 2 controls along the way, such as the mask or different cameras that had Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in there. Also, the unused toxicity meter was used in this game, and I still don't know the meaning behind it, but whatever. Looking at this game, it's honestly terrible, and I don't want to be mean, and I hate to offend anybody that's a fan of these games, but it's just so poorly done. Like, there was not a lot of effort put into this game. And I get it, this was Tyler's very first game, but it's like, if you're gonna fool everybody into believing that this is Five Nights at Freddy's, at least try to make it somewhat believable and don't just rip off the first two games. Anyway, back to the controls themselves. So while you're in your office right here, you have a right and a left button down here. The right one is for the cameras and the left one is for the mask. I'm not sure why you need a mask considering you have two doors on the sides of you, but you got a mask. Oh, and let's look at the characters, since that's the things we're hiding from. Look at these beautiful characters right here. Don't they just look absolutely gorgeous? But all in all, for this game on its own, it's literally just a bunch of, let's just say, stolen characters added on into a clusterfuck of a game. Like I said earlier, the stolen characters varies from the newspaper ad, where this is not even his work at all, as a matter of fact, and nothing in here is custom made at all. Like I said, the cameras are either from the original FNAF game or they're from the second FNAF game. The flashlight, the night one, the power, the doors, the office, everything from here is just stolen from actual FNAF games. But the biggest question mark in terms of stolen is the fact that Candy the Cat is in this game. And eventually the creator of Five Nights at Candy's got wind that Tyler took his character and added them to the game, and was originally gonna probably, argue with him or maybe have a lawsuit with him or some bullshit, whatever the case may be. But in the end, he just gave him the rights to it. He was like, you know what, screw it. You want it? Have him in the game. Go ahead. And what was even dumb was Tyler took Candy out of the game after he was given permission to use the character in the game, which didn't make any sense at all, but just adds to the long list of things that Tyler did that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Needless to say, this game was not very well received, and for good reason. And the biggest issue people had with this game wasn't the fact that it was just a cheap ripoff of the actual two games. It was the fact that people were genuinely confusing this game for the actual third Five Nights at Freddy's game. Like I said, this was released back in December of 2014, so everybody thought this was the official game until Scott Cawthon stepped in and made him change the name to The Return to Freddy's. After the name was changed, any controversy surrounding it or questions was quickly erased. And you may be thinking, okay, well that's it? No, my friend, this is far from it, as he ended up making not 2, not 3, not 4, but 6 other Return to Freddy's games. And I'm not going to get into every single one of them, but I want to look at details of these other ones so you can tell what we're working with when it comes to Tyler. Now, the second game is very similar to the original one. It's just a complete ripoff of it, except this one has not stolen characters in it. The character designs don't look much better at all, but I will give Tyler credit. They're no longer stolen, although the game, it looks like a very cheap copy of the actual second Five Nights at Freddy's game. He did kind of, in a sense, make his own rendering and anything surrounding the game, so I guess I'll give him credit. He kind of had to step up for it, but the characters on their own look just very weird. They honestly look like paper mache, like they're not even real to begin with, but I get it, it's not really his fault or whatever, and I'm not here to hate on anybody that's gonna make fan-made stuff whatsoever, because y'all are already a step up for me. I don't make fan-made games, but there are a couple characters in here that still kind of weighs a question. First of all, Candy is still in here, except he looks more broken down, I guess withered, if you will. And there's another character in here named Kitty something. It's like a pink-looking foxy cat thingy. And the backstory behind this one is actually that this was Tyler's ex-girlfriend. And whenever they broke up, she removed him. I think he removed her from the game or some bullshit. I don't know, something stupid. The biggest thing that is the funniest part about the second Return to Freddy's is not the crappy character designs or just the cheap-looking copy. It's the night guard that you play as. His name is Kenneth Kotz. Now, you go ahead and run that through your head and see if you can connect the dots as to who this character really is. Yeah, that's honestly stupid. I can't tell if it's a shot at Scott Cawthon or whatever, but he put that in the game, and it's honestly laughable and it's very stupid. But that's really all this game has to offer, if we're being honest with each other. It's really not that special. And I mean, you should just avoid it if you just want to play a quality fan-made game. There's plenty out there. And that's going to be something that's going to be ongoing for the rest of this series, is just these games are not that fun. And it's better off playing a different game. However, I am missing a very important detail. So in the Return to Freddy's 2, he would create a new character in this game, which is something that he would be doing every game for the rest of the series. This one is the most infamous one because this feels like the picture of the entire Return to Freddy's franchise. And this game is whenever he developed Lockjaw, which is pretty much just a combination of Springtrap and the puppet, or marionette, whatever you want to call it. This just looks like a cheap rag doll that you find in a voodoo shop, honestly, that couldn't be sold by the people running the place, or a rejected Build-A-Bear. And honestly, it's just stupid. But get used to this face, because he's in damn near every other game that's in the franchise. So let's just kind of skim on through these other games. In terms of the third Return to Freddy's, I think it is a definite step up from the original two Return to Freddy's games in terms of maybe quality. Again, it's just a ripoff, and that's the thing. Get used to this for the rest of the video. All these games are literally just ripoffs. That's the biggest problem that I have with him, is that he's not even being creative. The only thing he's being creative with is adding Lockjaw into the franchise, which is a very aggravating and stupid looking character that nobody really likes to begin with. But while we're on the topic of Lockjaw, we get to figure out the backstory behind him. So you know how in the original Five Nights at Freddy's 3 minigames, you have, the child running away from William Afton, and then you have the animatronics running away from William Afton and getting dismangled? Well, in this one, the child is actually running away from William Afton. And whenever you get into a room, you see the Lockjaw suit, and the child gets in it and gets crushed and pretty much killed the same way William Afton got killed in terms of Springtrap. And you can pretty much see, again, this is a stupid knockoff of the original game. Instead of William Afton getting killed, it's the kid getting killed. And thus, Lockjaw was born. Ha ha ha. Are y'all shocked? No? Me neither. Because this is honestly just stupid. Outside of the birth of Lockjaw, there really isn't anything the third Return to Freddy's brings to the table besides a cheap carbon copy of the original. Now, I will say that I think the fourth one is probably the biggest step up out there, because this one feels like an actual game from Tyler himself. In this one, you're at like some kind of Freddy Fazbear land type thing. I'm not sure what this is. It falls into the stupid storyline that Tyler ended up creating for this crap show. But the difference is, it's not a ripoff of the fourth game, actually. Because the fourth game, you're in the child's room and you're trying to fend off the nightmare animatronics. That's not the case here in this one. You're in an office and you have access to cameras. It follows the same algorithm as the original 3 Five Nights at Freddy's games. So, congrats, Tyler. You did your own thing in this one. But does that make this game any more enjoyable? Hell no, it doesn't. This game is, like I said, a step up, and it's a little bit different, and it's not a complete ripoff, but it's not enjoyable in the slightest, and it's low-key incredibly stupid. And the characters in here are literally just Freddy and Bonnie. For some reason, he removed Chica and Foxy in here, and also Vigo, which was a character they announced in the third one that I'm so sorry I skipped over, but it's best that we do skip over some of the dumb crap in here. And other than that, the minigames are pretty much still the same. You still, for some reason, play as Purple Guy in here, and there's a bunch of stupid crap that I'm not really going to get into just because of how stupid it is. But the fourth Return to Freddy's, if you're going to play any of the Return to Freddy's games, I would say definitely hop on this one because it is the more creative ones. Is it fun? Not really, but it's creative and not a ripoff. So the fifth one I think is probably the most bizarre of them all because this one is a free roaming FNAF game, which, look, I don't really know what to say about this one in particular. I mean, it has a lot of assets from Sister Location, and it's obviously very stupid, and there's another stupid list of crap in here, but it's free roaming. Is it fun? No. It follows in the same path as these other games. It's just all in all very stupid, and I don't even know if the full game released or not, but it was originally supposed to be a free roaming game or something. It was just stupid, honestly. Not a lot of people ended up playing it, and if you can find a way to avoid playing this game, please do just that. And all in all, that is the end to all of the Return to Freddy's games. I messed up at the beginning of the video saying that there were 6 of them. There's actually just 5 of them, thank God. But we're going to get into now the kind of backlash and the criticism that he was receiving during these games' development and upon their release. Not long after the release of the Return to Freddy's 5, this was pretty much the last straw for Tyler, as a month after he released it, he ended up calling it quits and saying that he was no longer going to be developing games as him and his therapist did not get along very well and brought out a very, very bad side of him. Which, side note, mental health, guys, is very important and is not anything to be taken lightly. If you need to talk to somebody about it, please do just that. There is always somebody to hear you out. But in terms of Tyler, you can pretty much see the handwriting on the walls right here. It was very clear him and his mental health were having a pretty big battle, if you couldn't tell from the games themselves. So Tyler's idea was this. He was going to give the rights to somebody else and say, here, you take over and have all the access to Return to Freddy's. And this person's name was Yin. Come to find out that Yin was actually just Tyler's alternate account, and what he had said before was just a made up bunch of bullshit, much like all of his games, and was just a cry for attention. And once people called him out on his bluff, he ended up giving the ownership to the Return to Freddy's to Toonster and Tanner Feline, which those two would eventually become good friends, obviously, and decided that they wanted to remake the Return to Freddy's 5. However, even those two got into some pretty deep arguments of creative differences for what they wanted to do to the game, which sparked a lot of controversy surrounding it, going as far as Tyler revoking them having anything to do with the Return to Freddy's and taking away their ownership from it. Tyler ended up going a little quiet after this whole debacle and eventually led up to him releasing a novel about the Return to Freddy's, and it's a long list of pretty much just crap that if you were to ever take the time out of your day to read it, would regret every single sentence and word that was put in place into here. Not long after that, a year later, he decided that he was going to reboot the novel again. Either that or make an entire other novel. I'm not entirely sure on it, but it's a lot of garbage put into one. And eventually, not long after this, Tyler attempted to reboot the actual Return to Freddy's game, the original one. Even going as far as to coming to Korea Studios and to trying to develop all these new games where he would distribute them into 2 different volumes. The first and second game would be listed as Volume 1, and the third, fourth, and fifth game would be under Volume 2. And it was set for an April 2018 release date. However, we never ended up getting it, and there was a lot of backlash and a lot of just controversy surrounding why these games weren't created. It's a lot of bullshit that I'm going to spare you the time of reading. And not long after that, Tyler ended up quitting altogether. and we never got a reboot of any of the Return to Freddy's games, nor did we get a reboot of the novel that he wrote. Look, let's just be honest with each other. We're probably very thankful that we never ended up getting that, and I know a lot of people shit on Tyler for being kind of a shit creator and a shit person to be around. He's stealing games, he's not a great person to be with, and he's not developing great games. But let's be honest with each other. Tyler had the same dream as everybody else. He just wanted to be a video game creator and just failed in every single aspect surrounding that. And honestly, it's his fault, but it's also not his fault. I'm not going to hate on the man too much. I know I just spent like a whole 20-minute video dedicated to hating on Tyler. The games are not very enjoyable at all. However, I am a firm believer that if Tyler were to ever get back on the horse and decide he wanted to remake some of these games, he could genuinely do a really good job. He was he was young whenever all these games came out, so his experience in terms of video game creating was obviously not there, and you could tell, not trying to insult the man, but you could tell he's not a very experienced game developer, which is not his fault whatsoever. And if he were to come out and maybe reboot some of these games, I can make a case where they would genuinely be better than the original games and change a lot of people's minds and honestly look at the perspective as the Return to Freddy's in a whole different view, honestly. And that would probably bring Tyler's career back to life. At last, we haven't really heard too much from Tyler in terms of these games. So this is pretty much all that he has left for us out there. If you guys want to play any of these games whatsoever for yourselves, if you haven't already tried them, you know what, to each its own. I'm not going to recommend it. I wouldn't play them, honestly, if I was you. But if you want to get the experience and see what the hoorah is all about, go ahead and play all of them. They're all listed on GameJolt. They're all free as usual. You shouldn't have to pay for this. And if you do, that's your own freaking fault. These games are not really enjoyable, but I guess they're worth the experience. I guess it's kind of like a scary amusement park ride. You don't want to do it, but you want to experience it at least. Whatever. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I'm sorry this video was a little bit longer than usual. I didn't try to stretch it out this long, but there was a lot to cover here in this video regarding Tyler. And honestly, not that good of a creator, but there is always chance for redemption, and I fully believe that. So anybody think I'm just hating on Tyler, I'm a firm believer of coming back, and Tyler can come back from this and make better video games. If Tyler's watching this, get back on the horse, bro. Make some better video games, dude. You got this shit. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you guys smash that like button. Consider subscribing. Go ahead and comment down below what y'all want to talk about next. I'm open for anything, and I love you guys so much, and I'll see you on the next one.